Okay, so the things you're gonna need is a scrap piece of paper, a thicker paper, watercolor paper from the roll of paper you got, a pencil, a little styrofoam square, a couple towels, hand towels, a dish for water. Doesn't have to be very thick, a shallow one is good, and then the markers. Here then you trace out on a piece of paper the size of the foam piece and start creating a cell phone, smartphone face to draw your artwork in. So I'm rounding the edges here, and I just use a piece of paper as a straight edge and as a tracer. This is going really fast. If you need to stop it or pause it or whatever, do so. But I'm just making a simple smartphone face, and then inside that I'm going to create my design. So very similar to what that little tiny image is on your worksheet, but here it's going to be totally your creation, and we're going to be doing this as a print. So I like the artist, the pop artist Keith Haring, and I'll put his name on the assignment here so that you can look him up. And he did a lot of these figures. They're not quite stick figures, they're kind of thicker stick figures or whatever, but I really like his simple shapes, so I would encourage everybody to kind of use that imagery kind of in their work. But if they have some other ideas, other pop artists that they're inspired from, then they can definitely do that. So here I just make a pretty basic shape of a person, and I'm thinking about like current events. So I was thinking of the coronavirus and the face masks, and kind of bringing attention to that and doing it in a style of the pop artist. Now I want everybody in the background to divide their background into two spaces, and then on one side use some kind of line design. It could be straight lines like I did, or zigzag lines, and on the other side do some kind of shapes. I use circles, but you can use, triangles, squares, anything like that. But two patterns in the background. Now I'm tracing mine with permanent marker so that I'm very specific about what I'm going to engrave into the print, and it makes it a lot easier to just kind of see it in a nice sharp outline. It isn't necessary totally to trace everything, it's just that I have some things that I can erase some of those extra lines so that I can see more clearly what I need to trace when I get it onto the foam plate. Now I'm going really fast because I sped this video up, so take your time. Now I'm erasing the extra pencil lines so I can really clearly see what I need to trace and see if I missed anything. Now you're going to cut it out so that you can then take that cutout and tape it on. Now don't use a lot of tape. Little and any kind of tape that you have will work, but you just need to kind of keep it on the plate long enough to trace it. Now I grabbed a color pencil to trace, that way I could kind of see where I was tracing, because then it's purple where I traced. And when I'm tracing, I don't have the pencil straight up and down because I don't want to dig into it. Now I did take a mechanical pencil here and do some of the detail ones because it was a skinnier lead, get into some of those smaller shapes. But take your time, make sure that it's skimming the surface, that you're pressing hard enough that it's making an impression, but it's not tearing. The paper shouldn't tear. And then I'm looking to see if I got everything. I don't take it completely off. The top is still taped on there. So I can make sure, and I'm feeling it with my fingers because sometimes it's even hard to see. So I missed a few places, so that's easier for me to put it back down and make sure all those areas are. Now I can take it completely off and carefully take the tape off of it. Don't rip the foam because that wouldn't be good. Now you want to go over it again, so I've a little bit sharper pencil And it's really nice with the pencil because you can see where you've marked and where you've traced. Now you don't want to press so hard that you're carving through to the back and cutting it out, but you do want to make sure that your indentions are deep enough so that when you make a print, it will stand out here. So there, I skipped ahead so you can see the impression on the back, but it's not carved through. Now that larger sheet of paper, you should be able to get 4 prints on it. So I'm folding it in half, carefully tearing a little bit of a corner, and then tearing it apart. Now, if you aren't comfortable tearing it, then you can cut it out with scissors and cut it into 4 equal sheets of paper. So I fold it back and forth, make a nice fold, and then tear it in half. But you can use scissors also to cut it in half. Now that water dish, I put it in that and I set it aside. Now it's very important that while you're coloring your plate, that your paper is soaking in the water. And now when you color it in, you want to make sure and use those watercolor based markers. Don't use anything that's permanent base, it will not work. It has to be water based. So Crayola is the ones I gave you, they're all water based. So coloring it in nice and solid, just making sure to get everything. I skipped ahead. Now I also add, once I get one layer, some shadows, some other details, kind of getting a little bit more interest to the color so they're not just flat. Playing around with it, getting some highlights and lowlights. You'll be surprised at what sometimes shows up that you don't think, because it doesn't show up much on the plate, but a lot of times will show up. Now, if you use any amount of black, don't use very much of it because black can take over and really blend out. So I'm creating little shadows here. Once it's colored, make sure you also don't touch it while it's being colored, otherwise you'll smudge it. Now I'm looking for anything really shiny. You saw there was a little shiny there, and I want to make sure it's not really shiny, water's not sitting on the surface. Center it, be careful, and once it hits the paper, don't move it. Always keep a firm hand on it, and when you're rubbing it, I forgot to tell you, you needed a nice spoon or something like that for a rubbing tool. You can also use the handle of a scissors. Once I've rubbed it pretty decent around in circular motions, I peek at it to see if it's making a print, and voila! So now you have 3 more sheets of paper. You can rinse off your plate in the sink, make sure the water that you use isn't dirty, but you can then take the next sheet of paper, put it in to soak, and color up the plate again and make another print. So do that 4 times total. Have fun!